Congratulations, you have just found the number one over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm the founder of The Silver Edge, and our mission is to help you build and maintain a lean, healthy body that you love for the rest of your life. So you can show up in the second half of your life as the leanest, healthiest, strongest, most vital version of yourself. Today we have another episode of the Coach's Corner, so no guest, it's just me, and we'll be back next week with our normal interview format. But today I want to talk to you about why your current exercise routine might be hindering your fat loss efforts and not helping. But before we get into that, I want to let you know that we have already started a wait list for our coaching services in January. So this episode's going to drop December 1st, and as you might imagine, January is a crazy time of year for basically all coaches who are in the nutrition, exercise, or health space due to all of the health-related New Year's resolutions. So here's the deal. Because we are a small business and all of our nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle coaching is custom tailored for each client, we're going to need to limit the number of clients we onboard at one time in order to ensure that each and every client gets our full attention. So with that in mind, we are going to cap enrollment at 15 new clients at the beginning of January. So if you're someone who wants to make 2024 a transformational year and you want to work with us to finally get off the diet and exercise hamster wheel and make permanent body composition changes, please shoot me an email at coach@silveredgefitness.com to get yourself on the waiting list. Now, if you're someone who's thinking about making positive health changes in the new year, but you're not sure if our services are a perfect fit for your goals, let's set up some time to chat before you just jump on our wait list. So again, if you're listening to this before January 2024 and you're interested in making a health-related New Year's resolution and thinking perhaps you'd like to work with us, please shoot me an email and we'll get you on the wait list. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get on with today's show. Is your workout program keeping you fat? Okay, before we dive into this subject today, I want to tell you about these two guys in my gym. So these days I'm going to a Globo gym. It's mainly a bodybuilding gym with tons of super fit, jacked guys and gals. And to be honest, most of them are young, but there's a few older buff dudes and dudettes. But really, when you think Globo Gym, it's one of these big, shiny gyms with all the different machines and tons of racks and free weights. And the population there, while most of the folks there are pretty serious, we really have all size and shapes like most gyms, right? And I want to tell you about these two guys that I see every time I go into the gym. Apparently, we have the same schedule. So every time I'm in there, I see these two guys. And now I can't remember the first time I saw them, but it had to be at least 6 months ago, probably longer. In fact, now that I think about it, maybe it was New Year's last year. Maybe they started going after the New Year's. I can't really remember. Now, these two guys, I don't know them. I see them all the time, and we have that kind of bro thing going when we catch each other's eye. We just kind of give a little head nod, but that's really the extent of our communication. And I'm pretty sure these guys aren't over 50, right? They're not listening to this podcast. I'm pretty sure, if I had to guess, they're probably, I don't know, upper 30s, maybe lower 40s. But here's what I want to tell you about these guys. These two guys are overweight, as in they both carry a lot of abdominal fat. And here's the thing. These guys haven't changed their body shape one tiny bit as far as I can tell. They look the same today as they did the first time I saw them. Now, don't get me wrong. These two guys are getting after it. They're not messing around. They're in there. They're lifting weights. They're hitting the battle ropes. They're pushing the sleds. They're doing crunches and planks and farmer carries. They're doing all of these great functional movements, but yet their body composition hasn't changed. Their bodies look the same as the first day I saw them. Why is that? And how could that be? Now, before I answer that question, let me pause and just say this. Again, I don't know these two guys and I have no idea what their goals are. Maybe they could give a rat's ass about building a lean body and all they care about is conditioning. And I'll say this, these two guys are light years ahead of any version of themselves where they're not consistently working out. But I want you to humor me and let's pretend that these two are working out because they want to lose some weight around their midsections, that they like to look good naked. Basically, let's just pretend that they want to look like they lift. And let's further assume that they're stumped. They can't figure out why their bodies aren't changing in spite of all their consistent hard work. It's certainly not a lack of effort. These guys come in, they warm up, and then they get after it. And I mean, they get after it. They go nonstop. Basically, what they're doing, as far as I can tell, is some kind of circuit training. So it looks like this. When one guy is, say, squatting, the other guy's pushing the sled, and then they switch it up. And then they do that for a few rounds. And then they switch to another exercise. So maybe one of them's bench pressing and the other one's hitting the battle ropes. And I mean, getting after it. And then they switch up and they do a few rounds of that. And then maybe one of them's on the glute machine while the other one does some crunches. And then they switch it up. They do a few rounds of that. And then they move on to the next exercise. You get the idea here, right? They're constantly moving. And really the only breaks I see them take are when they're writing down their reps and their weights and their notebooks. Now, here's the deal. CrossFit gyms, F45, Beachbody, Orange Theory, spin classes, boot camps are all full of people who don't look like they work out. So what the heck is going on here? How could that possibly be? If you've ever been into one of these CrossFit gyms or F45s or Orange Theories or spin classes, these people they're working out hard, they're sweating. They're working out until they're dropping with exhaustion on the floor. What the heck is going on? Some of them certainly look like they work out, but there's a good percentage of the population that's going 3, 4, 5 days a week, and they don't look like they work out. Now, there's nothing wrong with circuit training, boot camps, intense conditioning, and the style of training that these two guys are doing, but it's not strength training. And now, don't get me wrong, I love all of these elements. I love all of the circuit training and the boot camps and the intense conditioning. I love lifting weights. I love hitting the battle ropes. I love pushing the sled. I love intense conditioning work. I love CrossFit workouts. Heck, I'm a CrossFit coach. Now, I'm not currently coaching because my Silver Edge business is keeping me crazy busy. But the point is, I love all of these functional movements, and I even love them all thrown together in these crazy conditioning routines. And I even love them for people over 50, but only sometimes, as in not all the time, as in not making that the sole way that we work out, especially if your goal is fat loss. These are conditioning workouts. This is cardio. These are not strength workouts. Basically, this kind of workout is what I call cardio with weights. What makes strength training is the rest. Very often when someone gets on a call with me to inquire about the possibility of working with us, I'll ask them what they're doing currently for their exercise. And very often they'll say, oh yeah, I'm currently doing strength training. And then when I dig a little bit deeper, it's some fitness influencer on YouTube, and it's almost always, in fact, it might always be cardio with weights. But if you think about it, it would be a pretty boring follow-along workout video if you were to do, say, a set of 10 squats and then stop and rest for 60 or 90 seconds. And by rest, I mean do nothing. Don't do burpees, don't do jump rope, don't do crunches, do nothing to actually rest. So that would be a tough way probably for a fitness influencer to make very popular exercise videos. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, but wouldn't I burn more calories if I skip the rest and just go full ham? And the answer is sort of. So let's transition and talk about what happens when we rely solely on cardio or conditioning work for fat loss. Actually, before we do that, let's back up a little bit because I want to make a distinction between type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers. Now, you may have heard these referred to as slow twitch and fast twitch muscle fibers. So type 1 or slow twitch are your aerobic muscle fibers. They aren't very strong, but these guys can go all day long. And your type 2 or fast twitch muscle fibers are very powerful, but they're only good for short bursts. They suck when it comes to any kind of actual endurance. Now, a really good visual example of this is to Google an image of a world-class sprinter and a world-class marathoner. The sprinter is jacked and the marathoner is actually pretty scrawny looking. The sprinter has tons of that type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers, while the marathoner has primarily type 1 slow twitch muscle fibers. And here's the deal. As we age, we preferentially lose type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers, and we actually do a decent job of hanging on to our slow twitch muscle, which is probably due more to our lifestyle than it is to the fact that we're actually aging. And when we only do cardio or conditioning style workouts, we're primarily utilizing our slow twitch muscle fiber. And here's the kicker. Our type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers are metabolically more expensive than slow twitch muscle fibers. In other words, our bodies need to burn more calories to maintain this type 2 muscle fiber, even while we're at rest. So your metabolism, which is always looking to be as efficient as possible, will 100% get rid of any type 2 muscle fiber that it doesn't perceive that it needs. Now, to be clear, it's not just black and white like that, but I think you get my drift, right? So let's get back to why someone might struggle with weight loss by doing only cardio or conditioning type of training. When we're only doing cardio or conditioning style training, our metabolism adapts to this modality pretty quickly. In other words, as we become better and more efficient at these movements, our metabolic demands actually start to decrease, meaning we actually metabolically adapt over time to burn less, not more, calories during these types of workouts. And while it's 100% true that you are in fact burning more calories jumping around like a madman or a madwoman than the weightlifter who sits around for a minute or two between sets, that calorie burn stops the instant you stop exercising. And the other thing that often happens with cardio-only workouts is the body perceives a state of emergency, especially when paired with dieting. And this is extremely common. Someone starts a cardio or conditioning-based program, and remember, we're going to include here all boot camps, all fitness classes, CrossFit, F45, Orange Theory, Beachbody, P90X, Spin, Peloton, etc. into this group. And after a month or two, people that are doing solely this type of training, very often they don't have the lean body that they want, so they decide to go harder. Maybe they add another class or two and they start to diet. Now, your metabolism, whose primary job it is to keep you alive, perceives this increased energy output demand from these workouts, along with this decrease in energy coming in, that is, less food, and your metabolism doesn't know that you're on a temporary diet. It just perceives this as food scarcity, and it's thinking, holy shit, batten down the hatches. And there's really very little chance that a body in that emergency state is going to release its fat stores, at least in any appreciable amount, because your body perceives that stored fat as precious fuel, and it's got all these crazy demands. In other words, you have this intense exercise routine paired with not enough fuel to support that kind of activity. Now, remember what I said makes strength training. In other words, building that type 2 muscle is the rest periods. When we do well thought out, professionally designed strength training programming, we'll rest in between the sets. Remember, our fast twitch muscle fibers are super powerful, but they're wimpy when it comes to endurance. So in a classic example, a weightlifter might do 3 sets of 10 barbell back squats with, say, 60 to 90 seconds of rest in between. And while this style of training clearly won't burn as many calories as, say, those 2 guys that are doing the circuit training, the trade-off is that the weightlifter will continue to burn more calories even while he or she is at rest later in the day and through the night and even the next day. And when we are consistent with strength training, over time, we build lean muscle mass, again, that type 2 fast twitch muscle, which naturally speeds up and optimizes our metabolism. And keep in mind, when I say speeds up and optimizes our metabolism, what I'm saying is burn more calories. So let's imagine these 2 guys in my gym, they're listening to this podcast right now. Maybe I completely misjudged their age. Let's say they're both 49, getting ready to turn 50. They hear this and they come to me and say, okay, Coach Kev, we listened to your episode and we want you to program for us. And our main goals are to lose some of this abdominal fat, build some lean muscle, and Basically, we just want to look like we lift. We want to look like we work out. Here's exactly what I do from an exercise programming perspective. First things first, I'd get them to stop the circuit training cold turkey. Now, if they absolutely love this style of training and they couldn't imagine their life without it, we'd knock it down to maybe 1 day a week. Their cardio would be walking. That's it, just walking. 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day, at least to begin with. There's a time and place to add in more intense conditioning, but it wouldn't be now. And then I'd program 3 full body strength training days a week, and nothing crazy, maybe 45 minutes to an hour each session. And the foundations of these workouts would be functional compound lifts, things like squats, deadlifts, presses, pulls, with a few isolation exercises here and there to keep things interesting. And 90%, if not 100%, would be free weights, that is barbells and dumbbells. Maybe I'd throw in the occasional cable exercise or two. And that's really it. I'd want them to track their progress and to apply the principles of progressive overload. But basically, I'd have them doing things like 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps of each exercise with 1 minute of rest in between each and every set. And when I say rest, I want to be very clear. I mean rest. It would be perfectly appropriate for them to sit on the bench, to maybe pace a little bit, to stand there, to chit-chat, but they're resting in between sets. Remember that fast twitch muscle fiber, it's really powerful, but it just doesn't have any endurance. So that minute of rest, that 90 seconds of rest, whatever that rest interval is, we're actually allowing that muscle to just recover enough to get back to work. Now, nutritionally, I'd make sure these two guys were getting close to 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight every single day. And I'd make sure that they're eating enough to support muscle building, but not enough to put on excess fat. And after, say, 6 to 8 weeks of that, I'd probably switch up their programming a bit, and I'd put them both in a calorie deficit where the goal would be to shed some fat without losing any of the muscle that they've worked so hard to gain. And we wouldn't stay there long, maybe let's call it 4, maybe 6 weeks. And then I'd have them do a reverse diet back to a metabolically healthy number of calories. And we'd repeat that sequence a couple of more times until they reach their body composition goals. I feel like sometimes muscle building and strength training get a bad rap, especially for those of us over 50. I mean, most of us conjure up images of, say, Arnold Schwarzenegger or maybe these crazy looking steroid-filled meatheads. And it's even worse for you ladies. Most of you grew up with Jane Fonda and cute little pink dumbbells and aerobics classes, and you were warned not to venture over to the free weights because you'd somehow miraculously turn into She-Hulk if you so much as touched a barbell. But nothing could be further from the truth. Not only is muscle the organ of longevity, but muscle, specifically that metabolically expensive type 2 fast twitch muscle, is your fat loss friend. So, if you're someone who is doing all or primarily cardio or conditioning for your exercise and you're not happy with the results body composition wise, I would strongly urge you to consider starting a strength training program. And if you're a little overwhelmed and maybe don't know where to start, shoot me an email at coach@silveredgefitness.com and I'll send you a link to our free over 50 muscle building guide. Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I want to let you know that we have other free resources over at silveredgefree.com. There, you'll find our free guides with our top tips on nutrition, exercise, and healthy lifestyle to assist you in your weight loss and fitness journey. So feel free to head over there and download anything that looks useful to you. I'll put links to everything we talked about in the show notes, and you guys can find those over at silveredgefitness.com/249. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in 2 important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today. And until next time, stay strong.